Just hold on to that thought. Yeah. The reason why I say that is when all these four weeks or five, I wouldn't say 2 months, over the last 2 months, we have discussed these various examples that Uddalaka has given 9 examples. And in every example, he is completed that example saying, Saya Esha Anima, Aitadatmyam Idam Sarvam, Tat Satyam Sa Atma Tattvam Asi Shvetaketo. Okay. This particular line has captured the imagination of all the 3 schools of Vedanta: Advaita, Visishtadvaita, and Dvaita. So, in the 14th century, there was this big debate that happened between Advaita school and the Dvaita school. So, the Advaita school was the great scholar Vidyaranya, and from the Dvaita school was Akshobhya Tirtha, again a great Dvaita scholar. And the judge was no else than Vedanta Desikar himself, who is one of the greatest of Visishtadvaita scholars. So he was the judge who discussed this Tat Tvam Asi concepts between these 2 schools. On the one extreme, you have Advaita, on the other extreme, you have the Dvaita. Akshobhya versus Vidyaranya, having this intellectual discussion, and Vedanta Desika from Visishta Dvaita school, who was actually a judge. That discussion happened over several days. And hopefully what we have done is, over the last 2 to 3 months, when we were doing these 9 examples, we were able to capture some of the thoughts, some of the ideas that Akshobhya Tirtha and Vidyaranya would have exchanged, because that has been documented. There is an archaeological evidence that Brahmatantra Swatantra Jiyar of the Vishishtadvaita school in the 15th century. And then there is a work, Vedanta Desika Vaibhava Prakashika, again written by Mahacharya of the Visishtadvaita school on the 16th century. And then there is a work called Jayatirtha Vijaya in the 15th century. They actually talk about this discussion. Yeah. And Vedanta Desika gives the trophy to Akshobhya Tirtha after several days of discussion. Yeah. So we will leave that discussion as to what was Vedantika Desika's discussion and why he chose Akshobhya Tirtha's argument as more in tune with the philosophy of what Uddalaka was saying to each one of us. So we can do our research and try and convince ourselves, but that is the historical sketch. And I want to finish from all that I have understood from the various views that I have read. I think Jayatirtha's summary of this is perfectly perfect in this situation. And what did he say? Paramatmano atyanta binyasya swataha chidananda atmakasyapi jivasya anadi avidya kama karmadi nimitto ayam paramartata eva anyata karaha dukkadi anartaha na parameshwara prasadat rute apagacchati. Nacha asakshat kruto asau prasidati. Nacha avidita swarupaha shakyate sakshat kartum iti sakala guna karataya nishesha dosha gandha vidurayata cha tam pratipadayitum parabrahma asesha amnayaha pravartante tad upakarana bhuta cha brahma mimamsa iti paramartaha. So this is the complete summary of what Vedantic study and our journey of actually going to Gandhara back is. He can be known, the Supreme Being can be known only through the Vedas and interpreted with the aid of Brahma Sutras. He is to be known as the abode of infinite auspicious attributes and without any defects. Unless we know him, we cannot see him. Unless we see him, we cannot obtain his grace. God's grace is absolutely essential for release from bondage. Therefore, atato brahma jignasa. That is the greatness of the first sutra written by Vedavyasa in Brahma Sutra. And when you take that first sutra, which is the backbone of Vedantic philosophy, and you put Uddalaka's philosophy that we have done over the last 6 months, I am quite convinced that it actually completely falls into place. But then still we have this problem, isn't it, of are we Brahman? Are we different? Why do the Shastras talk about what appears to be Aikya? How do you square that circle? Acharya gives an illustration or a direction of travel for us in his work called Anuvyakyana. And he says, Swatantraye cha Vishishtatve Sthana Matya Aikyaropi Sadrishe cha Aikyavad Samyak Savakasha Yateshtataha. So what that does mean is we can have a kind of IKEA similarity on various grounds. Number one, if one is independent, we are all different, but we are dependent, that one person is all that matters. Or if you have similar views of thought, there is some IKEA. Or if we are in the same place, there is an IKEA. Or if you have a same approach, we have an IKEA. Or we have some kind of resemblance that can also be taken as IKEA. So these are all the various ways in which you should look at the IKEA text, because as I said in the very beginning, these are all Savakasha text, in the sense they have so many other ways of interpretation, and you do Tatparya lingas and rules of interpretation to understand. So many of the folks are actually not familiar and understand the critical analysis of Vedantic scripture. And this is exactly like a phase 3 randomized trial as to how you analyze the data and understand the philosophies. So what I am hoping is that over the last 6 months, we've had a very impartial discussion as to what Chandogya's chapter 6 is, what Uddalaka's philosophy is. And in that process, we were able to have a discussion as to how deep and how enriched our Upanishad philosophy is. So to summarize, 9 examples that gives you 9 ways leading to the Supreme. Let's summarize this. Ignorance of our origin and relation with the Supreme is the root cause of samsara. Again, by giving these 2 examples, he has illustrated the ignorance of origin and relations with Supreme. Supreme is the sustainer. Supreme is the source of creation. Supreme can be experienced. Supreme known only through the scriptures, learned through Guru's guidance. We are dependent even to receive knowledge, we are dependent on the Supreme. Right knowledge is essential. Wrong knowledge will lead to our downfall. So we need to be very careful with regards to how we understand and read the scriptures. At the end of the day, it is our career of souls which is at stake. Yeah, and that is what Uddalaka is giving us, that warning in the 9th example. Be careful, because your career is at stake, your journey is at stake. But understand that you are an eternally dependent being. So swatantram aswatantram dvividam tattvam swatantro Bhagavan Vishnuhu is a fundamental truth of Vedantic philosophy. HinduKnowledgeAcademy.com will celebrate Vedic culture and present its philosophies to the modern Hindu in an accessible format. Our ancient heritage is our greatest strength. Through preservation and dissemination, together let us spread positivity in the world. Thank you for listening and welcome to Hindu Knowledge Academy.